Breaking news today on Sekulow, an attempted assassination of Justice Kavanaugh outside his home.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
Remember on Monday when we said this would be a week where conservatives are under attack leading up to the January 6th committee public hearings that begin on Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, and on Friday in prime time, and then again next week. So we told you this is going to be an attack on conservatives week. Well, now we've got a literal, thwarted, thank God, attack on Justice Kavanaugh. In the early hours this morning, the security surrounding his home, which are U.S. Marshals, were able to stop a man, they say from California. We don't know if he lived in D.C. A lot of people from other places live in D.C., but had a gun and a knife, was a block away, also had burglary equipment. So he was ready to go through with this to kill Justice Kavanaugh. He said this to the police. He was there to kill Justice Kavanaugh because of the draft leaked overturning of Roe versus Wade, Dobbs opinion. So understand, they leaked that opinion to get violent pressure on people like the justices. And now a block away from his home, Justice Kavanaugh had an assassin come after him, thwarted only by information U.S. Marshals had. But, I mean, we're talking early morning hours. They are living on their normal homes. Remember, they don't live in special homes like the President of the United States lives in the White House with security like that. So on their normal street, it's surrounded by police. So when Senator, when I'm going to play this because it's very real and raw, Schumer said this in front of the Supreme Court. He's responsible for this. The rhetoric out of the left, the Biden administration, and Democrats, they are all responsible for this. Take a listen.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
That's exactly what this assassin was trying to do. He was trying to kill Brett Kavanaugh in the early hours of Sunday morning, where you would not know what was going on, and you've got a murder in your house who is coming specifically because of that leaked opinion. So whoever at the Supreme Court leaked that opinion, this is on you. And blood could be on your hands. Because there's also violent attacks occurring by this new group calling themselves Jane's Revenge, most recently in Buffalo. Yes, last night. Firebombing.
Crisis Pregnancy Center.
A pro-life pregnancy center. This, again, we are starting to see, and putting out that if abortions aren't safe, you aren't either. They also issued a statement that said, we're not going to be warning anybody else in the future about these attacks.
They're just going to do them.
Which means you can kill people.
Yep. So I want to go right to the Senator Schumer comment, because we're going to play that a couple of times today. You will reap the whirlwind. You won't know what hit you. Then you had, of course, the leak following that of an opinion from the Supreme Court. First time that's happened in Supreme Court history. A decision overturning Roe versus Wade. Draft opinion. Never happened before. Then you had to have U.S. Marshals, Andy, surrounding the Justice's house because Supreme Court police don't have jurisdiction.
No, that's correct. The United States Marshal Service protects judges of the Supreme Court of the United States and, for that matter, judges of any other federal district courts. And they have basically become now the safeguards, guarders of the lives of the 9 Supreme Court justices, in this case, Justice Kavanaugh. This is a new low in America.
It is unreal. They leaked the opinion. Schumer calls for violence, basically, and reaping whirlwinds. You won't know what hit you, and then, of course, an attempt.
Chicago mayor called it, the draft opinion when she saw it, a call to arms. And people are taking this literally, and they are trying to kill a Supreme Court justice early at morning hours today. But for that security, Justice Kavanaugh might not be alive today because of their rhetoric. I told you this week was the attack on conservatives. They're letting it out. And they're using domestic terrorist groups to carry their message out as well.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
And law enforcement sources are confirming to Fox that an armed man was arrested near the Maryland home of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. That happened early this morning. These are just the reports that we're getting in.
He was armed with a gun, a knife, and pepper spray, and told authorities that he was there to kill the justice.
Two people familiar with the investigation said the initial evidence indicates the man was angry about the leaked draft of an opinion by the Supreme Court with regard to overturning Roe v. Wade.
It's been a time of heightened tension around the Supreme Court, and there have been, as you know, some public demonstrations outside Justice Kavanaugh's house and other members of the court. And ever since the leaked opinion of Sam Alito's draft opinion in the Roe v. Wade case, the Mississippi abortion case, there's been a non-scalable high fence that's been around the Supreme Court building itself. So it's been a tense time here in Washington, a tense time for the court and for the justices.
I think it's important to also note Supreme Court justices, members of Congress, don't have the kind of security that the president has or the Speaker of the House has. And so there are moments where if you have some crazed individual with a gun that wants to do a justice harm, there is opportunity for that.
Law enforcement officials tell us that the man actually arrived by taxi and was seen by police and other law enforcement officials that were near the justice's house. So he was arrested. He was taken into custody. It's a little unclear to us right now whether this case is going to be handled by the Maryland state authorities or by the U.S. Marshal Service, which provides security for Supreme Court justices as well as other federal judges.
I told you Monday, conservatives under attack would be the entire theme of the week. Well, the rhetoric from the Schumers, from the Lori Lightfoots, from even President Biden that we've heard, from other Democrat elected officials, this rhetoric is turning into real violence. We could have woken up to news about a Supreme Court justice being assassinated today. Now, at a time when Supreme Court opinions are being leaked, that's not so outside thinking. In fact, people are explaining in Washington without the security of U.S. Marshals that they've got surrounding their house, which that's not pleasant either for the people that live on the street. This is all because of the rhetoric of radical Democrats who are now have been seized on this rhetoric by domestic terror organizations. So I want you to understand, just one more time for you, a man was apprehended early morning hours today, a block away from Justice Kavanaugh's house. He had a gun. He had a knife. He had pepper spray. He had burglary equipment. He was going to try and sneak in and kill Justice Kavanaugh. He told the police already that his intention was to kill, and he said why. Why? He didn't like that he signed on to that draft opinion overturning Roe versus Wade. So when they say violence is coming this summer, now they're planning also a date, June 13th, to try and prevent the court from even being able to get into their offices.
Yep.
This is the left again. This is Antifa-type groups again, and it needs significant condemnation, not just from conservatives, but from the left. The only people that can really tell them to knock it off is the left. They're in control. I don't think they totally will.
No, and we have the situation with Justice Kavanaugh, but that comes as violence against crisis pregnancy centers, women health centers have been on an unbelievable increase, including yesterday. Now, we have represented crisis pregnancy centers around the country in federal court, in the Supreme Court of the United States for 30 years. But now this group called Jane's Revenge, CC, they've attacked in Wisconsin, Buffalo, Asheville, North Carolina, and in Wisconsin.
Yeah, and more crisis pregnancy centers across the United States have been attacked and vandalized, firebombed, and it's all to try and shut down the work that they do, which is saving babies. And, you know, these pro-abortion groups, of course, they're pro-murdering babies, and now they're taking it to the point of, you know, pro-murdering anybody who wants to protect a baby.
They've literally said to these groups, and this through their messaging, after they do the firebombs, they said, one, no more warnings, so it doesn't necessarily have to be in the middle of the night when no one's there, but two, you disband or face, quote, increasingly extreme tactics. So this is not how far they will go. This is just the start.
So, Andy, they are announcing, this group, Jane's Revenge, through their surrogates, basically, the commission of intent to commit a crime. There are that's not protected speech when it's imminent lawless conduct.
No, it's not protected speech. When you have the imminent ability to create a situation where people are at risk of their lives, where criminal activity is afoot, and you've asked for criminal activity to take place, and you are advocating that kind of activity to occur, that is not protected speech under the Constitution or under any law of the United States. That is inciting to terroristic threats, and those are criminal offenses that U.S. attorneys and district attorneys ought to be prosecuting.
We are taking your phone calls at 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. Barbara's calling in from Utah. If you've got an opinion on this, thoughts on this, comments on this, give us a call now, 1-800-684-3110. Hey, Barbara, welcome to Sekulow. You're on the air.
Thank you for taking my call. I have long wondered why Schumer has not been arrested, has not even been sanctioned for inciting to riot and in threatening a Supreme Court judge with violence.
He should have been censured by Congress.
What should have been censured by Congress, but I'm going to play this fight again, and we're going to play it multiple times during this broadcast, because I think what he said crossed the line from free speech to inciting violence. And now we're seeing that violence come out. So let's listen to it again. This is Senator, realize where he is. Senator Schumer is saying this on the steps of the Supreme Court.
And I think it's a good contrast with January 6th, because a lot of that's based off, words like, march down to the Capitol and protest.
Right.
That's a lot different than hit them.
Well, they'll be hit with something they had never expect. Let's listen to exactly what he said.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
He is threatening a Supreme Court justice, there's two of them by name, interestingly, Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, by name, with saying they will not know what hits them. And then this morning at 1:30 a.m., marshals that are surrounding the justice's house because of this leak of the opinion arrest an individual who has now confessed that his intent was to assassinate a justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. So where's Senator Schumer's condemnation of any of this? Nowhere to be found, Andy.
No, nowhere to be found at all. As a matter of fact, Senator Schumer has incited more riotous conduct than anything ever attributed to President Trump, in my opinion. He has incited a killing. Whirlwind, you will pay the price. Pay the price how? Pay the price with your life. What else was he going to pay the price with? He can't be removed from office because of his opinion. He's going to pay the price. You don't know what is going to hit you. Well, I mean, what else but can any reasonable person assume from a statement like that but that it means violent action and violent conduct?
And then this group, Jane's Revenge, is saying if abortions aren't safe, they spray paint this on the one in Asheville, Cece,
right.
Neither are you.
That's right. If abortions aren't safe, neither are the crisis pregnancy centers. And that is absolutely, they are violent, they are threatening. And what's crazy is these are centers that only want to help pregnant women and save babies' lives. They're helpful. You can't know how many women that they've helped throughout the whole pregnancy process. And yet they're the ones that are getting targeted, firebombed, that we're going to shut you down.
We have the picture.
Yeah, I want people to see that are watching. And if you're listening to the broadcast, I'll explain to what we're showing folks. But this is the images out of the Wisconsin. Let's look at that first. Is that Wisconsin? Okay, there's Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, they just spray painted on the side. If abortions aren't safe, neither are you. And they trashed the building. They broke the windows. It looks like they went in.
No, Wisconsin. That's firebomb, right? Yeah, it's a firebomb.
It looks like like smoke. Yeah, okay. So there's what it looks like. There's Wisconsin again. Firebombed, office all destroyed, and these threat messages put up. What's next? Here's Buffalo. This happened early morning hours today. Firebombed, blown out, totally destroyed. Probably lots of equipment too, because they used and
then it says Jane was here, which is this anarchist group.
Right
now, do you think the FBI? Hopefully, you think the FBI is tracking them down? I hope so, because these people have said we're going to continue this without warning
and increase it.
Yeah, and increase it.
I hope the FBI is looking at it. If this is not jurisdictional with the FBI, then what organization would do it? This affects interstate activities and ought to be hate crimes that the left is always, ATF, hate crimes, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Every federal agency should be concerned that what we're doing is we're attacking these centers and attacking them because of their ideological beliefs, and in fact bombing them, busting their windows down, trashing their premises. Where's the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Jay?
I hope they're on it, because this is, look, we're going to play in the next segment that Senator Schumer bite, because I'm telling you something. He should be held accountable for this. I haven't said that before. I'm saying it now. He should be held accountable for his language, his rhetoric, which they're going to start a special committee on that. Why don't they have a special committee investigating what Senator Schumer meant?
Well, all Democrats, and add a few more.
Yeah.
Lori Lightfoot, we could go through a list. I'm sure a lot of House members who have said nutty, violent-sounding things as well. And because the Congress does have the power now, it's the Democrat Party in control right now to censure, to hold hearings, and investigate, because now we are seeing
no way
those words be used by groups to justify their violent actions. That included a thwarted, I can't believe I'm saying this, a thwarted assassination attempt last night right outside of Washington, D.C. A block away, this assassin was stopped from Justice Kavanaugh's home, who had a gun, a knife, pepper spray, burglary gear, this to assassinate him, and he told the police exactly why. This wasn't just a crazy person with the Supreme Court justice. He said, I wanted to kill him because he signed on to that leaked opinion overturning Roe versus Wade. So that leaker also, let's find that leaker.
Yes, please.
And prosecute him.
Yeah, I mean, first of all,
because people's lives are now in jeopardy.
Yeah. So
Literally.
This leaker who thought they were doing some ideologically,
it's not just protesting,
making a civil protest, so to speak, needs to be announced, found out, held responsible, as should Senator Schumer for what he said and done. Folks, they've gone from rhetoric to violence. That's what Jordan said. You talking about an attack? They've tried to undercut the institutions of our democracy. We're a constitutional republic, if we can keep it. And let me tell you something. They're going after the judges. Think about that for a minute. We're going to take your phone calls in the next segment. New York State, on top of all of this, is also targeted legally. Crisis pregnancy centers. We're going to tie that in.
While those pro-life pregnancy centers are being bombed in New York.
Yeah, now they got to have to deal with New York
like they were
authorities.
in Buffalo in the early hours of today. They've got to deal with a New York State investigation into their work as a pro-life pregnancy center. We'll be right back on Sekulow.
Can you tell me how many of your affiliates receive the majority of their revenue from abortion?
I don't know that answer.
Could you get it for me?
I'll talk to my team.
I think what we need to look at is the business of abortion. And the business of abortion starts with a sale.
An organization is chopping up children and selling the body parts to the highest bidder.
They can call it whatever they like. The reality is they've been caught red-handed.
I was told it was just a blob of tissue. She looked me dead in the eye. She said, it's not a baby. It's a blob of tissue.
We really did treat women like second-class citizens.
Do not ever kid yourself. They know exactly what they're doing.
We were driven by this quota.
I didn't want the baggage, in all honesty, of having a child.
I pretended I was fine, but I wasn't fine. She said, this is the best choice for you.
They're in the business of abortion. They worship at the altar of abortion.
Most people working in the abortion clinic make more money than they can anywhere else.
We would talk to them about gestational dates and what sort of abortion they could do, whether it was the medication abortion or the surgical abortion, depending on how far along they were. We would talk briefly about what the procedure would actually be like. I remember getting a directive from my supervisor, that we didn't want to give them too much information about the abortion procedure. We didn't want to talk to them about risks associated with the procedure because we didn't want to scare them out of having an abortion.
Does no one see what's really going on in America? Is this really who we're going to be?
We at the American Center for Law and Justice have been dedicated to the fight for life for over 3 decades. Whether it's at the District Court, the Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court of the United States, or in the halls of Congress. We are part of the fight.
We want you to be there with us. Go to aclj.org right now. ACL.
Okay, so we're calling it Rhetoric to Violence. And we've said this entire week was going to be a war on conservatives. It's coming with the January 6th hearings tomorrow night, in prime time, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I mean, again, I think that's just day one of two this week, and then more next week. And we know at least two of the three major networks are covering it from beginning to end. I don't know if NBC made the final decision yet or not. But again, we called it this week, and literally, we said that the rhetoric is has now turned to violence. So the concern is not so much the rhetoric, but actual violence. We're going to talk later in the show about what is happening in Washington, D.C., right next to our office, planned for June 13th. But right now, we walked you through just the violence that occurred in the last 24 hours on pro-life pregnancy centers. So, Buffalo, New York, Asheville, North Carolina, Wisconsin. You've got fire bombings, which do a lot of damage, destruction, make those have to shut down their work and have to rebuild and re-raise money to build and all of that. And then also these threat messages by a group called Jane's Revenge. And they're saying now, by the way, you thought this was bad, we are going to use increasingly extreme tactics. This is the same time an assassin is caught a block away this morning, early hours, from Justice Kavanaugh's personal home outside D.C. in Maryland by U.S. Marshals. The guy had a gun, a knife, pepper spray, burglar gear, took a cab there, and told the police, I was there to kill Justice Kavanaugh because, so we have the because too, or the why, because he was signed on to that leaked draft opinion overturning Roe versus Wade.
Now, on top of that, we went through the list of crisis pregnancy centers around the United States that have been firebombed.
Just the past 24 hours.
Right. Now, in addition to that, and one of those is in Buffalo, New York. But don't worry, because New York has, Cece found that this morning, the state of New York in its assembly, and it's passed the House and the Senate, has an act authorizing the Commissioner of Health to basically investigate. I mean, folks, this is serious. Investigate these crisis pregnancy centers and audit them. So while they're being firebombed now, Cece, they've got to worry about this.
That's right. And this bill has passed, like you said, the House and the Senate, and it's now gone to the governor's desk for signature. But it's just like we saw back in 2010 when New York City went after crisis pregnancy centers. They want to shut them down because they do such great work of saving babies. And this bill, literally, like you said, it does a review of just the limited pregnancy centers, service centers.
That is the crisis pregnancy
right,
center.
That's the crisis pregnancy. So anybody who doesn't do abortions, those are the only groups that this bill comes after. And they have to turn over basically all their documents about funding, documents about who they service, so the women that they service. They have to send operational manuals, handbooks,
while
guidelines.
They're being bombed.
While they're being bombed.
Right.
And all of this is to have a report come out, and then they're going to give recommendations and for solutions to address any service gaps or negative impact. And
in other words, they're going to use this to close them down.
That's right.
And we have litigated this all the way to the Supreme Court and won, but they don't stop. But as Jordan said, the rhetoric has turned into violence, and then you've got legal ammunition coming in the form of a legislation that's going to be signed by the governor of New York. There's no doubt.
Right.
That's going to have to be challenged, which we will do. But the fact is, this is an all-out assault on the fight for life, Andy.
Well, it is an all-out assault on the fight for life. You know, the statements that Schumer made at the front of the Supreme Court of the United States, I want to know why that's not domestic terrorism and a call to domestic terrorism. Why isn't Merrick Garland, who sicked the FBI on parents who were raising their voices at school board meetings about what garbage school boards were allowing their children to be taught, why isn't he looking at Senator Schumer, now the majority leader of the Senate, for domestic terrorism and inciting to violence? What is the difference in the standard? I don't see any. Why isn't he doing this?
Well, we're going to find out. Because I think now we're reached a fevered pitch when you have a justice of the Supreme Court of the United States with basically an attempted assassination. Not basically, that's what it was. We got calls coming in too, Jordan.
Yeah, that's right. Let's go to Sue in California on line one. Hey, Sue.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to know what's being done about finding the person who leaked the SCOTUS opinion, and if nothing is being done to find that person, why not? Why aren't they pursuing?
So the investigation is being conducted by the Supreme Court's Marshal's office. Now, the difficulty with that is you would say, why wouldn't you bring the FBI in? And the reason they didn't bring the FBI in is because this is separation of powers. The FBI serves the executive branch, and this is another branch of government. So it's an internal investigation. But it is hard for me to believe that they don't know who did this. Now, they may have law enforcement proceedings going on. And how would that work? The marshal would take it then to the U.S. Attorney's Office if there was a crime?
Yeah, I mean, if there was a crime committed in the District of Columbia, you take it to the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia, and there could be a federal crime here, theft of government property. I don't know. I'm just saying what Bill Barr, the Attorney General under President Trump, surmised, and that might be very well the case. But the marshal is conducting this investigation, and they're going to
they've got limited resources and limited ability to investigate.
They don't have subpoena power.
But that person is a link with Senator Schumer into what now is going on.
Right. Without that person's leak, no one would have been caught trying to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh this morning. Okay? That's just the bottom line truth.
Well, that is the truth.
That is what the assassin said. It's because of the leaked opinion, and his name was on it. So let me just be clear here. I think that the court was ready for security. I'm sure they're going to be not even at home and lots of other places when that opinion comes out because of what they've already seen. But because of the leak, you had an attempted assassination. Not because of the actual opinion. That's not even out yet. Because the leaked opinion, you've had an attempted assassination of a Supreme Court justice. And they're still talking about January 6th. This is what they want to bring up this week. When their liberal, nutty, insane rhetoric blame the Democrat Party. Blame Planned Parenthood. Blame their rhetoric. Because the rhetoric has turned to violence. They want another summer of burning cities. But yet they're going to redirect you this week and say it's the right that we really have to be worried about. No. The summer of burning cities is not going to be Trump supporters or pro-lifers, for goodness sake. It's going to be leftist, activist, domestic terrorist groups. And if they used 1% of FBI resources, they could arrest all the people involved in this Jane's Revenge group today. They can't be that sophisticated. They should all be tried to the highest crime. These people could have died with these fire bombs. They should be living in jail for at least 10 to 15 years. Send a message before the summer of fire begins. Before, as we're going to talk about in the next segment, they try to shut down the Supreme Court next week. They are telling law enforcement. And the question is this. The D.C. police, because of the liberal mayor, are they told to stand down?
Well, you know, one of the
because it's not just going to be Supreme Court police that are able to prevent that.
Because everybody forgets that on
our street.
That is our street in Washington. But everybody forgets on January 6th that President Trump authorized 20,000 National Guard to be called up. And guess who turned it down? The mayor of District of Columbia and Nancy Pelosi. So now our building street is going to be blocked, obviously. Already is. And all we're looking at now is a threat to shut down a branch of government again because of a leaked Supreme Court opinion. That clerk or that person, whoever it was that did this, has reaped the whirlwind, all right, but they need to be held accountable. We'll be back with more in just a moment.
keeping you informed and engaged. Now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
We told you Monday this would be a week of conservatives under attack leading into tomorrow night, the beginning of these primetime January 6 hearings. But it's literally turned to an actual violent attack on conservatives and conservative causes this week. And it's because of rhetoric from Democrats. I don't like to even say liberals. It's their leader in the U.S. Senate. So you take this from Chuck Schumer about Brett Kavanaugh and about Gorsuch too. And then I'm going to just lay out again where we are today. So take your calls at 1-800-684-3110 because we have more to talk about, more threats coming to Washington, D.C., and specifically the U.S. Supreme Court. But listen and watch Chuck Schumer. This is the leading Democrat in the U.S. Senate.
Majority leader.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you.
You won't know what hit you. Well, last night, actually today, early morning hours, exactly when an assassin would try to kill someone, an assassin was thwarted. A block away from Brett Kavanaugh, Justice Kavanaugh's home. He had a gun, he had a knife, he had pepper spray, burglary equipment, and he talked to police. He said, I came here to kill Brett Kavanaugh, and I came here to kill Brett Kavanaugh because his name was on that majority leaked draft opinion overturning Roe versus Wade. We now have multiple attacks occurring, even in Washington, D.C., on Capitol Hill. We can show the picture of that, I believe, to those watching right now on pro-life pregnancy centers by this group, Jane's Revenge. So there, again, the kid's not far away from our office on Capitol Hill Pregnancy Center. It says, Jane says revenge. So, this group also, though, that was about a week ago, has gone next level, as they've threatened to do. They said either you disband your organizations or face, quote, increasingly extreme tactics. So we saw it's gone from vandalism. Now let's show one of the places bombed out. They bombed out pro-life pregnancy centers. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
Because they just bombed out.
There you go.
Okay, that's bombed out. You can't operate. It's not like you just clean up a little broken glass.
So
this is how their rhetoric has turned to violence in their war on conservatives this week. And it is Democrats, not just liberals. Democrats specifically who started this.
Okay, so I'm glad we played the Senator Schumer statement because people will say, well, he had the free speech right to do it. But when you listen to actually what he said, and if you're very specific as to what he said, you know what he said? He said, you're going to pay the price. And Andy, as you said, well, the price is what? They don't get voted off the court.
No.
So what is the price? The whirlwind's going to be released, which included an assassin.
Well, that's exactly right. The price is not impeachment or removal from office. Look, this was a planned leak by somebody in the Supreme Court who had access to this so as to achieve the ends that Schumer wanted to achieve.
Right.
Which is exactly what he got, an attempted assassination attempt. In other words, we're going to leak it, and then we're going to raise public opinion to a fever pitch and do exactly what we ended up doing.
And then they attack Stacey immediately as this is going on, folks. They bomb. Jordan's right. Let's call it what it is. Crisis pregnancy centers.
Right, because they want to shut down anyone who is supporting the life of babies, of unborn babies. And that definitely includes crisis pregnancy centers. And we have seen that they've gone through, from just spray painting on the buildings to literally bombing them. They are going to shut them down because they don't want another baby saved.
All right, folks, we're going to continue to take your phone calls. They've got more planned for Washington, D.C. next week. We're going to bring in Than Bennett to talk about that because that also affects our office in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, which is also across the street from the Supreme Court. It is the street where they actually the justices enter the Supreme Court via vehicle. So there's been a lot of shutting down of our street already since this leaked opinion. We'll talk more about that. Support the work of the ACLJ at aclj.org. Be part of the show today. 1-800-684-3110. You still got time to do that, too. 1-800-684-3110. But support our work. aclj.org. We'll be right back.
When we see something, When we hear something, when we're concerned about an issue, we don't just talk about it. We do something about it. And that goes to our Government Accountability Project.
The things that are important are knowing where to look and who to look at. What we're trying to do is get information that we, the people, are entitled to. We sort of call them puzzle pieces because we don't know which ones we're going to need in the long run. But you gather all the puzzle pieces together, and then you start to put them together to uncover the truth, really.
The Freedom of Information Act, that's a statute that allows us to get information from the government. Starts with a letter from our offices in Washington to these agencies. And it says, give us this information on these topics. And generally, they don't. And then we go to court.
We go through a series of lengthy negotiations back and forth about what they'll give or what they won't give. We may get tons of information that's redacted, and we have to then go back and say, you redacted too much. We can't really find out what you're giving us because it makes no sense. So it goes through a process of litigation.
That is how you get information, and that office is going to be more active now more than ever.
The ACLJ has been extremely active in vigorously seeking to hold these bureaucrats accountable. We have filed hundreds of FOIA requests. We have received over 20,000 pages of documents in our litigation.
How was our government operating? What were they driving at? What was their agenda? What was their motive? And I will tell you, I mean, sometimes the picture that it paints is one of terrific abuse.
You're finding a nugget in a gold mine. Occasionally you'll come up with something that is really a bombshell, but you have to persist in doing it, and that's what we do.
That's a little bit of what we do through our Office of Government Accountability, and of course that comes under our Office of Government Affairs. So your support of the ACLJ supports all of that.
All right, so if the attempted assassination of a Supreme Court justice not enough, if the fire bombings and attacks on pro-life pregnancy centers just in the last 24 hours that we've seen aren't enough, I want to go right to Than Bennett in Washington, D.C., because Than, a group which is kind of calling themselves using the hashtag #ShutDownDC, is coming together to block the streets around the Supreme Court Monday. It's the next opinion day from the court on June 13th. And they want to shut down on Supreme Court decision days to plan to blockade all the streets around the Supreme Court, all this relating to the Roe versus Wade leaked opinion overturning Roe versus Wade. But then I think about already the impact this has had in our office in Washington, D.C. by being on that street in the security perimeter that's basically shut down most of the time now. These groups are forecasting to law enforcement that we are going to try to stop. And, aren't they going to be talking about this Thursday?
Yeah.
Because they're trying to stop the function of the U.S. government. Which, are they going to be put in jail for 15 and 20 years, these people who get arrested, like the January 6th protesters? And the people who did bad things on January 6th, they got long prison sentences? Because these people are doing and saying they are going to do, Than, the same activity, which is to stop the U.S. government's work, which is a federal crime.
Well, Jordan, I can tell you it's already having a significant impact, too. I mean, this is right in line with what you've been describing happening in other cities across the nation. It's been part of a ramp-up. I think you showed the picture from the Capitol Hill Pregnancy Center right down the street, the vandalism there. But then you're right, Jordan. It's going to be ramped up next week, June 13th, when they're telling law enforcement that they're going to block down as much of the city as they can, centered right around the Supreme Court, which, of course, is our office, too. And just let me tell you anecdotally, Jordan, I mean, this is not the most important thing, but I can tell you this. It takes me an additional 15 minutes to get to work today, and that's just the last 2 blocks to get to our office right now because everything's shut down. So, look, it is being ramped up, and there is no end in sight.
That's the part, too. No end in sight. Yeah, I mean, I remember last time I was in Washington, D.C. a couple weeks ago, very quick in from the airport, and then one of our guys there, long-term guy, Rodney, said, this is going to be another 30 minutes just to get to our blocks. I mean, there's no joke about that. And This is, again, think about that's impeding us. That's one thing, but we're not the U.S. government. That's just their own. This is just the government security. They're being told they got a group of people ready to block the streets to stop the justices from even getting inside the building to do their work. It's exactly what the committee is supposed to be having hearings on this week. It's the same kind of crime. And yet these folks are telling you in advance. It's not like this is going to get out of order. They're telling you what we're going to do. shut you down, prevent you from doing your job as the Supreme Court.
We've had an attempted assassination on its Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States because Senator Schumer used reckless language, inciting violence. A insider in the court leaked a draft opinion, could be, as Bill Barr said, theft of government property. And at the same time, simultaneously, you've got all of these attacks on crisis pregnancy centers. Merrick Garland says this. He said, threats of violence and actual violence against Supreme Court justices strike at the heart of our democracy, and we will do everything we can to prevent them and to hold people who do them accountable. Now they've arrested someone 1 block away at 1:30 in the morning with a weapon, with burglary gear, who has acknowledged now that he was there to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh, who they demonized during his when he was being confirmed. And then the senior senator, the majority leader, gets in front of the Supreme Court and threatens Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. At the same time, you have now, while all this going on with this attempted assassination, these attacks on these crisis pregnancy centers. These are attacks. This is not, we think that we want to get an injunction to stop them because they're not complying with some law. And then, of course, New York, as I said,
is trying to do that.
Is trying to, while they're being bombed, New York is trying to shut them down.
Yes, and they've been trying this for decades, and they won't stop.
Nope.
The pro-abortion side will not stop, and nothing is too much for them. We've seen that. It's not just words. It's not just threats. They are putting these threats into actions that are deathly.
We have taken this all the way to the Supreme Court on these crisis pregnancy centers and have been successful. But see what they're doing, Jordan. You said this, and Andy, this is the problem. They've taken this out of the realm of litigation and have now made it criminal and are doing things that are clearly criminal acts.
Yes, of course they're criminal acts. Bombings, assassination attempts, murder attempts, attempts to destroy and to annihilate premises where someone advocates a particular point of view. These are things that the FBI and the Justice Department ought to be investigating and prosecuting. But I don't see a lot. I didn't hear anything from Merrick Garland today about this. They arrested somebody. Well, what are they going to do? Let him go? And you find him with burglary tools, pepper spray, and a gun, and he's at the house of the Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, and he says he's here to kill him because of his leaked opinion? Well, that's a crime. That's a federal crime. That's a Title 18 offense.
Yeah, the statement I read today was from Garland, but it's muted. That's the problem with all of this.
Oh yeah, it's no rhetoric there that shows, hey, we're going to go after these criminals.
They
and these
know
other
there's a group, Jane's Revenge,
doing it.
Find out who they are and infiltrate. Like, do you what the FBI
They're not that
supposedly
sophisticated.
does? That's the problem.
They're firebombing places. It's horrible. You got now an attempted assassination. Shut this down. Where the U.S. use your federal laws should be done very quickly.
We are looking
a third world country,
like a third world country,
and we're going to have hearings about the January 6th thing to
which
make
is
us look more like a third world country.
Can I tell you something? What happened on January 6th? We've said it 100 times. I'll say it again. It was horrible.
But we're
the people should be prosecuted. So you know what we've got though, because we didn't call out the National Guard when it was authorized because of politics. That's number one. Number two, and I think we got to be clear on this. Okay. It goes back to the baby formula missing. We're the United States of America, and this is what we're dealing with.
Our judges being judges like this being the highest court
targeting. So, Fan, I'm thinking, right now we don't have the Supreme Court police could not do this. They don't have the authorization nor the funds. Now there's legislation, but you said it's being blocked in the House.
Well, it's a great point, Jay. I mean, look, there are actions that could be taken to actually improve the situation. When this draft opinion was leaked, the United States Senate approved unanimously. Look, it was probably over the objection of Senator Schumer. He had no choice at this point. But they unanimously, Jay, approved authorization for the Supreme Court police to extend their protection 24/7 to justices and their families, including around their homes, to assist the U.S. Marshals that have been happening now. Jay, Speaker Pelosi today continues to block that legislation because she wants to amend it. Look, it's very easy. Approve that. The threat is real. It's very clear. It was demonstrated last night. And if you want to address other issues around the periphery, fine. But you should be passing that legislation right now as we speak. Literally, Jay, as we're on air, Speaker Pelosi is blocking that bill that moved out of the United States Senate 100-0.
I mean, Senator John Cornyn called her out, said, Speaker Pelosi, I implore you just now, please pass my SCOTUS security bill. Like Dan is talking about. Every day they don't, the threat to justices grow. The potential for tragedy becomes more likely, and House Democrats achieve a new apex of political dysfunction. It is like what I said. I want to be very clear here. This started with Democrats, Democrat leaders, Schumer, Pelosi, and once they start with leadership level, with that level of rhetoric, their little underlings follow the same kind of rhetoric because they say, okay, this is the leadership says, so I can use that same kind of rhetoric as well. They were supporting the illegal protest outside of a justice's home because those people were there to influence a judge. And that is actually a crime. It's not speech that we protect because there's opinion. You know why they're there. You're trying to threaten them into doing something based off your protest. That protest that they supported has now turned into an assassination attempt.
Yep. Let's take Bill's call in Wyoming on line 4. Bill?
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Thanks for taking my call. First of all, I agree with you about what Schumer did. I'm really upset about that. But now I've got I called him for 2 questions. First of all, what about Mayorkas? Shouldn't he be doing something or be called on the floor because of the fact that he called concerned parents domestic terrorists?
Yeah, so you wonder in a situation like this if, first of all, this should be the FBI as the primary investigative tool here at this point. This is not the Supreme Court Marshal's office. This was an attempted assassination. There's state issues and state and federal crimes here.
Yes, of course. So the jurisdiction of the states in Maryland, I think in this case, is an attempted murder, stalking. I can go through all attempt to commit burglary, terroristic threats. I'm a prosecutor. I can list you all the crimes, both federal and state. Title 18 offense about threatening Supreme Court justices or justices of the Supreme Court. They're all there, and they ought to be used, and the FBI ought to be pursuing this diligently. And Merrick Garland, the chief law enforcement officer of the United States, ought to be screaming at the top of his head.
We will not tolerate this. That's what he should be saying.
And I haven't heard that.
No, he said strikes at the heart of our democracy. They make these like platitude statements, Jordan. Instead of saying, you know what, we're gonna get to this. We're putting the FBI on it. We're not gonna have justices of the Supreme Court threatened with assassination with a guy that actually had a gun and was a block away from his house.
But it goes against their narrative of right-wing extremists.
Right.
Because there's left-wing extremists. They're firebombing pro-life pregnancy centers. And they try to kill a Supreme Court justice. So this idea that it's just the right-wing extremists in the January 6 hearings, we got left-wing extremists trying to stop the court from being able to do its job. It's the same charge most people are getting on January 6th. And I guarantee you those people won't be charged with that level of crime when they show up to try to block the justice from doing their job. We've got more coming up. Stay with us.
We start our coverage with KPIX5's Betty Yu on the high-profile recall targeting San Francisco District Attorney Chesa Boudin. Betty?
Liz, Chesa Boudin is one of the most progressive prosecutors in the country, and that's why this recall election is being watched so closely nationwide. Now, San Francisco voters elected Boudin in 2019 when he ran on a platform of criminal justice reform. Recall supporters say the city has become more dangerous since he took office.
Recall Chesa! Recall Chesa!
The progressive reforms that helped elect San Francisco's District Attorney Chesa Boudin in 2019 may have caused those same voters to toss him out of office last night.
60% of the votes counted so far in favor of removing Boudin from office. It comes as San Francisco sees a surge in violent crimes. Murder, shootings, property crime like burglary and shoplifting soaring since Boudin took office.
I've been robbed on Mission Street. I was jumped on 6th Street.
The owner of this San Francisco sandwich shop says the DA's politics are no match for crime in his city.
The ideology that's happening now is a little bit dangerous for the residents.
I'm not sure he's just soft on crime.
I think he's arguably pro-criminal, which is the problem when it's the prosecutor in the city. And this was not a close recall. It's currently 60-40 in favor.
Even those who voted him into office have told us that they feel he simply was not doing enough to fight crime in this city. And now progressive prosecutors in other cities like Los Angeles and Chicago who are facing the possibility of a recall there are going to be very closely watching the results here.
So what happens next? Mayor London Breed will appoint a replacement, and because Prop C is failing, that appointee will be eligible to run in November to finish out Boudin's term through 2023.
Welcome back to Sekulow. We're going to take your phone calls to 1-800-684-3110. There are voters, though, are starting to take note of what's going on. I didn't want to finish out the show today without talking to you about what we talked about yesterday. So in California, in San Francisco, so one of the most liberal major city in the United States, certainly, by 20%, 60% of the voters there, as the votes come in, have voted to recall their district attorney. Do you know how hard it is to get a recall on a district attorney level? I mean, it's hard to get it at a gubernatorial level that people actually, well, even then, it's tough. But on a district attorney level, you have to have such bad crime going on, such bad policies being enacted. And as we said, this was a DA more interested in social engineering than law enforcement, that they have voted in San Francisco to recall their district attorney. This is huge. They will then have, again, there'll be someone appointed by the mayor who called out this district attorney for making the city, allowing the state to just devolve into violence. Also in Los Angeles, a candidate for mayor is leading and will be and it goes into a runoff between a former Democrat Congresswoman Bass and Caruso, a business guy who was a Republican until he started running for mayor. He's got support from Elon Musk, and he is in the lead. Now, it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out in L.A., but you're seeing in two very liberal cities on the left coast, voters who are liberal saying enough is enough.
Well, the DA thing, let's start with San Francisco. So that's not a shock, Andy, because we said yesterday a DA's job is to prosecute crime. If they're not prosecuting crime and are engaged in social engineering, the city's going to go into chaos. And guess what's happened in San Francisco? Chaos.
Yeah, and 60% of the people who voted yesterday said this is not a prosecutor. This is a person who is socially engineering through his mental makeup, having been, remember, raised by Bill Ayers. Because his father, Weather Underground father, went to jail for 40 years for robbery and murder. His mother spent 20 years in jail in Weather Underground activities that she was engaged in. So Bill Ayers, Obama's great mentor, raised this guy. Well, what do you think he's going to be? He's not going to be a prosecutor. He's not going to prosecute urination in public streets. He's not going to public camping, soliciting sex, blocking sidewalks. All that stuff goes out the door. Now, the interesting thing is that Mayor London Breed is now going to be selecting a new prosecutor. Well, guess what? Put me in as the DA in San Francisco. I'll bring 12 South Georgia prosecutors there. Give me 6 months and I'll clean up your city for you, Mayor Breed. You know how to get in touch with me.
Back to the phones.
You have to get admitted in California. But Cece's admitted. Cece could wave
job
you in.
on. Absolutely.
There you go.
We got Lawrence in Nebraska on line one. Hey, Lawrence.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I have one question. What Schumer said to the Supreme Court justices, if a Republican, worse yet, a Christian Republican said that, he'd be in prison today. Why isn't he in jail?
Well, because the argument was at the time they made the speech, it was free speech. But when but there's a case called Ohio versus Brandenburg, and it says if that threat is imminent lawless conduct, it's not protected speech. Now, nobody went after the speaker. He would argue, he'll argue free speech, he'll argue speech and debate. They argue everything when they're held accountable.
But the Senate can't hold him accountable too.
No, the Senate did nothing. And here's the truth: what you said, Jordan. You've got to look at this in a chain of events. Justices get confirmed. They don't like that. Opinions then are leaked. Crisis pregnancies are firebombed, and associate justice of the Supreme Court of the United States are threatened with are attempted assassination.
Like
it's
I've
pretty
said,
dramatic.
Extreme rhetoric to now extreme acts of violence.
Yeah.
Violent attempted assassination of a Supreme Court justice because of this opinion that was leaked out. And he admitted that already to the police. Understand that, folks. We don't have to figure out any of that. It's because of the leaked opinion, a Supreme Court justice, there was an attempted assassination that was thwarted only early morning hours today, a block away from his house. Okay, so law enforcement could have been injured as well if this got a step further. They were protecting him. So think about that. Think about just in the last 24 hours, the pro-life pregnancy centers that have been firebombed, and they say that's not the end. This is just the start. Our attacks are going to get increasingly more extreme.
And we're not going to give you notice anymore.
No more notice, no more
warnings. I hope
warnings.
the FBI's figured out who Jane's Revenge is. Let's go ahead and
Can't
take
be very
a call.
hard for them to do that. This
You would
is
think.
a pop-up kind of group. They should be able to do it. But did they ever figure out who Antifa was?
No.
So there you go. But
Take a
they'll
call.
figure out the Proud Boys and all that very quickly. Yeah. Elaine in Illinois online too. Hey, Elaine.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. I have a comment, and I have to say that I'm really angry, but not surprised that the same people who call for my body, my choice are eliminating the choice for women who have a surprise pregnancy or whatever and want to go to a pregnancy center for help. They won't be able to.
Well, this
and
is
it's just, you know,
it's infuriating. Sure. But here's the problem. The fact of the matter is, then you have New York legislation. While they're being firebombed, now they have to hire lawyers for their insurance claims and hire lawyers for New York giving additional oversight, even though these places have the right to exist. And they've been trying to shut them down for 4 decades. And we've beat them back every time. But now they got violent attacks and at the same time, Cece, a legal maneuver from the state of New York.
That's right. And Elaine's exactly right. They're not pro-choice. They never have been. They don't want you to have a choice. If you choose to have your baby, just like this New York law says, oh, guess what? That's going to equal negative impact. Unless you choose to have an abortion, that's what they want. If you choose to have your baby, that's going to be called a negative impact, and they're going to shut these centers down. And we know it's going to happen. You have the Department of Homeland Security issuing a report warning that radical abortion activists are threatening all this kind of violence, including to burn down the Supreme Court building and murder justices and their law clerks.
Well, they're doing it. I mean, they tried it. They tried it with Justice Kavanaugh this morning.
That's right.
Take the last call, Jordan.
Jessica calling from Buffalo, New York, on line 3. Hey, Jessica.
Hi, Jordan. Hi, Jay. Thank you so much for mentioning the story in Buffalo, because here locally, our news outlets were not even reporting on it until late in the day. And when they were, it was about the 5th or 6th story down. They led the evening with the debate between Kathy Hochul and her other primary challenger. And it just shows you the priorities in Buffalo, and that they called it an arson. They weren't even really calling it what it was.
They're calling that arson. So, I mean, let's show it on the screen again for people who can watch. Can we, again, put it back up? Do we have the inside or the other? I mean, it is arson. But it's firebombing. It's a violent attack on a Buffalo nonprofit organization. It should be a big story in the local news because, again, it's a warning to other people who might be associated with groups like that. The city, that's what local news is for. So, hey, if you're a church that's maybe associated with pro-life movements, things like that, maybe you need more security. That's what local news should be doing. But instead, it's even infected local news.
That's the problem.
And so, even in Buffalo, you're getting less coverage of this than you are on our broadcast.
Let me tell you this, though. The American Center for Law and Justice, when we're done with this broadcast today, our lawyers are going to be in contact with these crisis pregnancy centers that are under attack, literally, and legal attack, literally, and we're going to defend them. We've been doing it for 4 decades. We're going to continue to do it. Folks, your support of the ACLJ makes all the difference. ACLJ.I encourage you to support the work of the big, important day to do it. ACLJ.org. That's ACLJ.org. This is all because of a pro-life position. That's what's happening here. We'll talk to you tomorrow.